This special presentation, Dan Neaverth, the kid from Keppel Street on WBBZ-TV 5, is sponsored by Hector's Hardware, with 6 locations in Western New York.
Welcome to The Big Picture. I'm Phil Arno. Last week on The Big Picture, we showed you a part of a documentary on Danny Neaverth and talked about some of the good old days at KB Radio. Today we're going to show you the second segment, the second part of that documentary. And with me right now is Ron Shawnee, who actually produced, directed, pretty much did everything for this documentary. How did you get involved with this, Ron?
Well, first off, thank you for having me, Phil. The documentary was a labor of love. Danny and I do these goofy videos that are on YouTube and Facebook and everything, and people are very interested in his life story. So I wanted to put something together, but not just about the funny side of Dan Neaverth, but the compelling side, the family side. So the documentary, The Kid from Keppel Street, Dan Neaverth, shows the whole spectrum of his life, beginning from Keppel Street, going to Cottersport, Pennsylvania, and then to Fredonia. Some things that people didn't know, he worked at WBNY for a while, okay? Went to KB, left KB, and then came back. The story is there, and then it ends with him going back to Keppel Street.
It was an interesting documentary. I enjoyed the whole thing. You know, my first job in the business was at KB Radio.
Okay.
And I started out last week by showing my KB yo-yo shirt because I played basketball for the team. We used to play faculties at high schools and volunteer fire companies, and it was a great time. Good place to meet girls too. And I was just a sophomore in college at the time, so it was quite a heady experience for me.
The documentary, the thing that I love the most about it is that it's compelling, and it's funny, but it's also very heartwarming to show Danny on this side, because as you know, Danny's funny. And he's goofy. And
it's history, too. It is history of what kind of this area was all about back then. You know, radio was very big at the time, very big.
Radio, as you say, it was a giant,
yeah,
as opposed to the way it is today. And we show that whole scheme with the documentary.
Okay, well, here we go with the second part of the documentary, The Kid from Keppel Street. Enjoy.
Good morning, Danny.
Good morning, Danny.
Good morning, Danny. Good morning!
And I'm Dan Neaverth, KB Radio Music. Got up bright and early this morning just to be the first kid on the block to say good morning to you.
Good morning from the cast of the Dan Neaverth Wake Up on KB.
Don't you know we love you, Danny?
Everybody move to Danny.
Danny gets you up the KB way.
Morning, y'all.
The program directors that I worked for at WKBW, I got along with most of them, with one exception, for a short period of time, and that was Sandy Beach, who coincidentally is one of my best friends. My son Dan did the sports on my morning program, and he came right out of college, and Sandy hired him to be the sports guy. And he was there for a while, and then all of a sudden the general manager decided that it wasn't a good idea for family members to work together. So Sandy called me in and fired my son in front of me.
The mistake I made, and it was a mistake, I recognize that now. When I did it, I had both of them in the office because I wanted Dan to see how regretful I was that we had to do it.
I feel bad that I think some people might look back at that firing at KB when I was all of like 19 years old. And I don't really give that much thought at all. And I wasn't the only one that they had to let go. I mean, it was the nature of the beast. And I certainly didn't try and kid myself that I was an important cog in a 50,000 watt powerhouse.
And we had a little time where our relationship was cool. It's the only time in the 50 years that I've known him. And my only regret is having to do that. That's pretty good.
But the irony of that was that later, when Sandy left the station to go to WHTT, he took Dan Jr. with him as his sports guy. So they were competing against me in the morning.
It was a very unique experience growing up with my dad. You know, I remember from the time I was in kindergarten to college, people would normally say, when I would say something, they'd say, "What is wrong with you?" And I would say, "If you grew up at 6132 Ward Road, you would get it."
Well, I think the one thing that they don't know, and he's done a pretty good job of hiding it over the years, is the fact that my brother Dave, Darren, and Dean were actually adopted.
By the time I came along, being the fourth boy, I think he was all out of steam with the discipline stuff. So when you have an older brother that, you know, is like perfect, you know, everybody else after that is not.
People often ask me about the characters that I had on my shows at WKBW Radio. The morning show would not be able to support these characters today because they would be considered too controversial. We had the engaged woman. The engaged woman, "Well, don't touch me, I'm an engaged woman." Where did that come from? It came from one of the secretaries at WKBW. I walked in one day and I slapped her on the back like this and I said, "Yeah, how you doing today?" And she said, "Don't touch me, I'm an engaged woman." Okay? But the one main character was the guy that I always took advantage of. He was the guy that had to do all the dirty work for me, and that was Artie.
Artie.
Who is this?
Artie, this is Rick Azar.
Mr. Azar!
How are you?
Boy, I'm fine.
The reason I did these characters is because I was all alone in the studio, and I like to play off of people. I used to use a couple of phrases like first kid out the block to say good morning to you, looking at you through the hole in the record.
Hey, this is Dan Neaverth, KB Radio Music. I got up bright and early this morning just to be the first kid on the block to say good morning to you.
Good morning, Danny.
I remember hearing a disc jockey in New York City, and he signed off his show something like this. He said, "We'll see you tomorrow. This is the curly-headed kid in the second row, right here on WOR in New York." And I thought, the curly-headed kid in the second row. That's kind of like an identifier. I don't even know if he has curly hair, and he's probably not sitting in the second row, but that's cool. I like stuff like that. So I'm going to come up with something like that, but not that, okay? So that's pretty much the way it happened. I would hear things from other people. They would say this, and I would take it and turn it around a little bit, and that's the story. That's something that people greet me with all the time. They'll see me and they'll say, "Hey, Danny, move your fanny," or "Hey, Danny, have you moved my fanny?" Okay, when we first debuted that on the radio, it was kind of a mixed reaction.
Danny moves your fanny. What a way to start your day. WKBW.
Tommy Calandra was the guy who wrote that and recorded it for me, and it became a real emblem of my show.
Dan Neaverth is everybody's best friend. If you know Dan Neaverth, you're a friend of his. I don't know, I've never had anybody talk down about Dan Neaverth.
He was very, very clownish, but funny. Funny.
The only ones that have ever spoken negatively about Dan Neaverth are people that have beaten him in the ratings, which means nobody. Nobody.
You know, Danny would take ordinary things and make them funny. He would see things the way that they are not seen with the ordinary eye. He had a special eye.
So that's Dan Neaverth. That's Dan Neaverth, and I'm glad he's my friend, and it always will be.
The way I got into television was kind of interesting. Tommy Shannon was doing a dance party show, similar to the one that was on the national TV with Dick Clark. And it was very good. And Tommy, good-looking guy. Kids loved him, especially the girls. And Tommy was called up to serve our country. So they asked me if I would fill in until Tommy came back. So I said, yeah, I'll be on TV. That's good. Part-time thing. So I go over to do the show, and I did 2 of them. And then the show was canceled. They then thought, well, maybe we can use Dan for something else. Dave Thomas was leaving Channel 7 to go to the affiliate in Philadelphia, a much bigger job. So they approached me. Phil Buth, the general manager, kind of liked me. And he said, we'd like you to do Dialing for Dollars as a co-host and the noon weather. Well, our general manager at the radio station didn't like that idea. He thought that if I did 2 of those things, I would lose interest in the radio show. And so they compromised. So I didn't do Dialing for Dollars. I did the weather outside on Channel 7.
First question, of course, will there be school for the kids tomorrow? Buffalo public and Catholic schools are closed tomorrow.
And it was a good run. I did that for a long time. When I left Channel 7 to go to Channel 2 to do Nearly Noon, my contract stipulated, as all of my contracts had up to that point, the exact times that I would work. I was working from 11:30 till noon, doing the show. Of course, you do other preparation, but that's what the contract said. So when Channel 2 was sold, after about 1.5 years of my doing the show, they came and said, we're canceling Nearly Noon.
I'm Dan Neaverth, and we thank you for joining us on the very last edition of Nearly Noon.
And we'll reassign you because you have a contract. I said, well, read the contract. It says I work from 11:30 till noon.
And I want to talk to you about the Channel 2 Danny Neaverth going away party.
Oh, really?
Yeah. You didn't get an invite?
So for the next 2.5 years, every day, come over from my radio show to Channel 2, put my feet up on the desk, read the Buffalo News, which was a lot thicker than now, right? About like that. And I would then leave at noon and say, hey, guys and gals, I'll see you tomorrow at 11:30. I did a lot of TV commercials during my career. And the big ones, of course, would be Bell's.
Another way that Bell's is consumer-wise for the wise consumer.
And the Value Home Centers.
I'm going incognito to one of Value's many convenient locations.
Did them for a long period of time. And eventually, I met up with a guy from one of the agencies at a party. And he looked me in the eye and he said, you know, I got to tell you something. You are overexposed. I said, I got all my clothes on. What are you talking about? And he said, no, you're on TV too much. I said, what do you mean too much? He said, well, I was considering using you for a commercial, but I got to thinking, you're on with so many other commercials, people wouldn't really pay much attention to you. So I was overexposed. But the good thing was it helped pay for some college educations. Phil Buth was the general manager at Channel 7, and I think anybody who worked for him would say, wow, he was a great guy. He was one of the best. Well, he went to work for ABC, which was part of the company that we worked for in Buffalo. ABC, Disney, they all got together, and he was in charge of their morning programming. And he did that for a couple of years. He contacted me and he said, how would you like to come down to New York City and do the weekend weather on ABC Network? And I thought, wow, a network? Me, Buffalo, New York, Dan Neaverth, ABC Network. And then I mulled it over and I talked to Marie about it. And we decided no, because then I would be doing like 7 days, traveling a lot. And how would this affect my life here in Buffalo? And so I decided, no, I don't think I'm going to take it. Thank you, Phil. And I sometimes wonder what would have happened. But I know it turned out really good for me staying here.
Stay tuned. We'll be right back with the conclusion of our documentary on Danny Neaverth.
Hector's Hardware is celebrating their 70th anniversary, and we want to say thank you for being a part of that journey. Hector's Hardware has 6 convenient locations and is family owned and operated. It's a real neighborhood hardware store. Hector's has everything you need to get the job done. They have a full line of Toro snowblowers, along with ice melt and scrapers. So, for all of your hardware needs, visit the Hector's Hardware closest to you. Hector's is one heck of a hardware store.
Good morning from the cast of the Dan Neaverth Wake Up Hour on TV.
I don't think they understand how much of a family man he is. I'll tell you a story that's absolutely true, and if this doesn't say what a family man he is, I don't know. I was working for NBC in San Francisco. I was programming a station for them, and suddenly I was called to New York. Now, I didn't know why, because they didn't have anything special going on in New York, but they summoned me, so I had to go to 30 Rock. Here I am at one of the biggest corporations in broadcasting, and I have a blank check to get Dan Neaverth to talk to them about coming to work in Chicago.
WKQX, Chicago 101.
So we start talking. I go set up an arrangement for a nice dinner, and we start talking about what it would be like to be in different markets. And when the word Chicago came up, a lot of money there, a lot of prestige there, and I tried to get him to say that, yeah, that would be interesting, that he would talk to them. I didn't say that, okay? But when I said to him, by the way, I have a blank check from NBC to get you to come to Chicago. A blank check. I've never heard of that. I've never seen it. I've never done it. I never heard of it. So the next day I called him. We met for breakfast. I told him, have you made up your mind? I hope you got an answer that's positive for me. He said, yeah, Maria and I talked about it, and we're very happy that my name would come up, but we're not interested. I said, why would you not be interested in a major check from a major player? And he said, because of the boys. He said, Maria and I wanted them to be educated in Buffalo. We knew the people that were teaching them. We knew their friends, and we want to keep it that way. Now, there aren't many broadcasters that I know that would give up a blank check to NBC. You are no questions asked, but he did.
One of the interesting things of working at WHDT was the fact that some people thought that I used my ability, my power, whatever you want to call it, to get my whole family to work there. The truth is, they all worked there before I came there.
On one hand, I was, running the sales department of a radio station, and then on the other hand, I was doing a character in the morning.
The Deadhead is here. Welcome to the program, Deadhead.
It's a sharp-looking tie you got there, Sardo. What, really?
You like that?
What, did you go to Herb Tarlick's garage sale?
PJ Fox, who is Dan Jr.'s wife, okay? She had worked at those stations for almost 15 years before I got there.
People used to say, oh yeah, he got them all their jobs. It's like, wait a minute, I was here way before any of them.
It wasn't a nepotism thing at all. They earned their positions, all of them.
You're listening to Oldies 104. I'm Dan Neaverth. Let's talk about sports. And Dan Neaverth Jr. is here. The Sabres finish on a winning note.
Sports shorts, the Sabres and the regular season on an upbeat note. A lot of people think he came to the radio station and then the rest followed. But I actually had a phenomenal opportunity to work with Sandy for about 4 years. And then Sandy moved on and they hired Dad.
I signed a contract with WHDT, and I got a $4,000 bonus. I couldn't believe it. I don't believe anybody in broadcasting in Buffalo has ever received a signing bonus. You're lucky to get a good contract.
Just trying to be the best person you possibly can, of just, again, treating people like you want to be treated.
Me and all my brothers, I think the quick wit, the one-upsmanship.
Probably being a little smart ass, we'll say. You know, coming off with a quick answer.
We came from an extremely stable upbringing, and the only expectations my parents ever had of us was to do exactly that, to be good fathers, good husbands.
Oh, he loves the kids, and the kids all love him. Papa, he's Papa to them, and just they remember all the silly things that were done through the years, and the Easter egg hunts and all the fun stuff, the parades on the 4th of July.
They love great grandpa. They love great. And I'll actually, when my dad's here, I'll leave the room so that he is now in a position where he has to interact.
It's the same grandfather to them as he was a father to us. And he's instilling the same things in the kids, and they love being around him. They just love having him around.
This is where I grew up, and she lived about 2 blocks down there on Littell. She would walk by every day going to South Park High School, and I would be going to Bishop Timon High School. I never saw her until years later. At the corner, there's a delicatessen, and she was standing there with her good friend, Dorothy, and they were eating ice cream. And I just casually walked by them, and I said, "Hey, that looks good. Could I have some of that?" And she held out her ice cream cone, and I took a little bite out of it, and kind of took a bite out of my heart. That was the beginning. That's when I first met Marie, the love of my life. And I spent 59 years with her. She was super special, terrific wife, and an amazing mother with 4 boys.
The thing that comes to mind most about my mom was any holiday. We'd get in the car, any needy family that my mom knew about, we'd drive up, she'd leave the car on the road, she'd hand me an envelope and say, "Go knock on the door and just give them the envelope," and walk away.
They called her Kojak because the famous detective on TV, Kojak, could solve all the crimes, and Marie could solve all of their crimes.
You know, she was the disciplinarian. You know, she was she used to say originally, "Oh, wait till Dad gets home." You know, we'd go up to our room, and then Dad would come home and, threaten us with the wooden spoon. But we weren't really scared of Dad. You did not want to mess with Mom. When Mom spoke, you listened.
She was also the financier of the Neaverth family.
If my dad had ever gone into the local bank to cash one of his checks, they would have detained him because there's no way that signature matched Dan Neaverth's signature. And that was because as the chief banker, my mother did all of the banking, including his signature, on just about every single check.
We traveled a lot, and then it got to a point where she said, it seems like we've been everywhere, and you just love to travel. Go.
My mom wasn't a traveler. She didn't like traveling at all, but my dad just loves it. And he always exposed us to the really important stuff, not just, like I said, going somewhere and laying at the beach. That was never something we did.
This was one of the trips that I took with Sandy Beach and his group and his lovely wife. And we're at the concert, and they were playing this love song. And everybody got up, and they're doing this kind of thing, singing the song, and everybody was in a great mood, and I was crying, and because I missed her. She hadn't passed at that point, so when I got home, I was anxious to tell her about what happened, and so I was out on our deck, and I found a video of that song, and I was playing it. And so I wanted to take the video in. I took my video, and I was going to show her this song that we had talked about. And she was gone. who am I? Just a guy who was so fortunate to have a fantastic family, fantastic wife, obviously, and a career that I would never have dreamed I could have. I'm just a kid from Keppel Street.
That was a great look into the history of one of the great radio stations in America, and it happened right here in Western New York. Ron, this was very well done.
Thank you.
And you know, I considered those guys, Danny and Sandy and Fred Clustine and Don Burns, Jack Armstrong, they were all good friends. And some of them are not with us anymore, but things like this, that for all future, that kind of preserves a time that was very special in Western New York.
You know, it does, and that's why we wanted to do it. And I wanted to do it now because, you know, they are getting up in age, and they should be celebrated while they're still around. And just to be able to have this, not only for Danny, but for Danny's family, his sons, his 4 boys, and their children, his grandchildren and stuff. It was really a labor of love to be able to put this together.
One thing I remember the most is laughter was the common thread. You know, everything that we did, there was humor. And like no other job that I've ever worked, that was the most lighthearted, fun job that I've ever had. That radio station was incredible. And, you know, I don't think it'll ever be duplicated.
It never will be, and I think that it's a shame because the broadcasters of today, as they're coming up through the ranks, it's just not the same, and they're missing so much. But I feel that by putting out something like the kid from Keppel Street, Dan Neaverth, they'll be able to get a feel for the way that it was, and hopefully maybe gravitate back to.
Well, you know, for those people who have businesses or work, you know, in a place where there's several employees, something to take away is humor, lightheartedness, laughter. You know, if you can add that to the work environment, you know, without ruining things, that will improve not only the way people feel, but how they work, how much they produce. It's something to really, really be aware of, and it's lacking in so many businesses today.
You're absolutely right.
That's, if there's a lesson to be taken away from the old days of KB radio, humor is the key to being the best experience you could ever have. That's it for this big picture. I was pleased to bring this to you. Thank you to Ron. We'll see you next time on the big picture. And thank you for watching WBBZ as well. We're your local station, and we count on you. We'll see you next time on the big picture.
Shall I see you later, okay? You're going to call me? Sure, I'll call you later. You coming by? I'm going to call you. I'll see you later. All right. Come here. I love you. How are you? You're beautiful. I'll see you later, okay? Call me later. All right. What time? About 6 o'clock. Don't forget to call.
Come on, Jake. Ah, good boy.
This special presentation of Dan Neaverth, the kid from Keppel Street on WBBZ-TV 5 was sponsored by Hector's Hardware with 6 locations in Western New York.